Alright guys, welcome back to Underground Science, and in this video we'll be talking about the synthesis of insulin in our pancreatic beta cells. Alright, so just a little overview, right? So if we draw our pancreas here, right, at least do my best to draw the pancreas, right? So that probably looks horrible, but if we draw the pancreas, we have our acini, alright? So we have these structures called our acini, alright, which kind of branch out like this. Alright, so we have our structures called acini, and pretty much our acini are part of our exocrine system of our pancreas. Alright, so we have our acini. Alright, so we have our acini, and our acini are part of our exocrine system, alright, of our pancreas. So our acini release all our pancreatic digestive enzymes, so that they release our pancreatic digestive enzymes, right, to digest all that food that you eat, digestive enzymes, and also our pancreatic acini are responsible for releasing bicarb. And the reason why we need bicarb is because, remember, our hydrochloric acid, that our chyme from our stomach that comes into our duodenum, super acidic, so we need something to neutralize it, right? So bicarb is a major neutralizer in terms of making it less acidic, making our chyme less acidic. All right, and acini make up 99% of our pancreatic cells. All right, so our acini cells, our acinar cells, make 99% of our pancreatic cells. All right, now what's the 1%? The 1% is part of our endocrine system of our pancreas, or our pancreatic islet cells, or our islet of Langerhans. All right, so and they're in clusters. All right, so let's say we have a bunch of islet of Langerhans here, and we have more than the one you guys may be familiar with, right? The islets of Langerhans that you guys may be familiar with is the beta cells and the alpha cells, or the beta cells and alpha cells, right? But we also have things like F cells or PP cells and delta cells. But in this video, we're just going to focus on the beta cells in particular. All right, so these are our islets of Langerhans, islet of Langerhans, and so we're going to write this down, and then so let's go and say that this takes part in our, or this is part of our endocrine system of our pancreas. All right, and this makes up 1% of our pancreatic cells. So this makes up 1% of our pancreatic cells, unlike acini, which makes up 99% of our pancreatic cells, right, in terms of the exocrine system and endocrine system. All right, so that's that. Now let's go ahead and focus on the fact that, so let's go and review some basic mechanisms, right? So when you eat, right, so when you eat, what happens? If you eat a carbohydrate-rich meal, right, a carbohydrate-rich meal, can't speak today, then what happens next? Well, our blood glucose levels rise, right? So our blood glucose levels rise up. So our blood glucose, along with amino acid levels and fatty acid levels, but if we just focus on blood glucose levels for now, we know that after we eat, especially a carbohydrate-rich meal, our blood glucose levels in our blood, I mean, obviously, right, blood glucose levels rise. All right, so also indicated with this arrow. All right, and then what happens is that your beta cells actually detect the high blood glucose. All right, so then what happens is that your beta cells, or one of your islet of Langerhans cells, right, detect that high blood glucose. So our beta cells detect it. All right, and what happens next is that our beta cells then, after detecting the high blood glucose levels, start to secrete they already have insulin. So they have inside the beta cell, guys, we have insulin synthesized, right, through our mechanism of protein synthesis, because insulin is a peptide hormone. All right, so if it's a peptide hormone, we make this hormone through protein synthesis. So DNA transcription, then translation, and then the mRNA goes to our ribosomes, And through some mechanisms in our Golgi apparatus and our endoplasmic reticulum, we have insulin, right? And we'll discuss that in this video. So beta cells detect the high blood glucose, and then they synthesize and secrete insulin. So then what happens next is that after detecting the high blood glucose, our beta cells secrete insulin, right, into where? The blood, right? Into our blood, into our bloodstream. And then insulin can go exert its effects on the liver, the fat cells, the muscle cells, all right? And so that's what happens. So now let's go and draw insulin here as a result, all right? And it'll go again, it can go to our fat cells, and we'll talk about what insulin does specifically to specific cells in a future video. But it can go to our fat cells, right? Store some fat there. It can go to our liver cells. You can go to our liver cells and enhance the process of glycogenesis. All right, so glycogenesis, and insulin could act on the liver by storing just a little bit of fat in the liver. All right, but that's generally the more common ones are it's going to go to the liver. Then insulin, since it's a peptide hormone, is not going to enter this phospholipid bilayer of the liver cells. Instead, it's going to actually work through a PI3K and protein kinase B pathway that we'll discuss in a future video. And it's going to cause glycogenesis, so the production of glycogen, right? Just a bunch of sugar molecules joined together, right? And then also insulin can go to your adipocytes, right? Your fat cells. So it can go to your adipose tissue, right? And once it goes to your fat cells, it can actually bind on that tyrosine kinase receptor, right? And then what's going to happen is that you can end up storing fat, right? Storing triglycerides. So it's going to be lipogenesis, all right? You'll store fat as a result. And also, one last thing to just have an overview before we start the actual secretion and synthesis of insulin in the beta cells, that it can also, guys, go to your muscle cell, right? You can go to your muscle cell, and let's write what it does here, so there's more room here. And in your muscle cell, insulin can again bind to a tyrosine kinase receptor, and then it will exert its effects, right, through protein kinase B. And what it's going to do is that it can bind to your muscle cells and bring in glucose, right? Because remember, your muscle cells and your fat cells have GLUT4 receptors on them, all right? So glucose transporter receptors type 4, and GLUT4 receptors are dependent upon insulin. They need insulin in order for glucose to come through these receptors. So that's why when insulin binds to your muscle and fat cells, then we see a lot of glucose coming in, or a lot of glucose coming in through your GLUT4 receptors. Just like that. So when insulin, guys, goes to your muscle cell, it can bind to your muscle cell, right, a specific receptor, and that can cause intercellular mechanisms where it activates this GLUT4 receptor on your muscle cell, allowing glucose, right, into the muscle cell, and glucose can then get converted to ATP through glycolysis and transition phase glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. ATP is used for muscle contractions, all right, so that's important in the muscle cell. So muscle contractions, and then it can also turn glucose into glycogen in the muscle cell also. All right, so glycogenesis in the muscle cell. And one other thing it can do is that when insulin goes to your muscle cell, right, so let's go and draw insulin right here again to your muscle cell. So, sorry guys, ran out of space, so it's getting kind of messy. So it can also go to your muscle cells and increase protein synthesis, all right? Protein synthesis. How will it do that? It's going to cause more amino acids. So it's going to cause a higher level of amino acids, sorry, couldn't talk there, to come into your muscle cells so that you can use those amino acids to make proteins like actin and myosin, right, to increase your sarcomere length and increase the thickness of your myofibrils. So amino acids. All right, so increase the concentration of amino acids inside your muscle cell. Insulin will. All right, so it does a lot of things. Insulin is classified as an anabolic hormone. All right, so it's an anabolic hormone. Because right now, guys, did we see anything that insulin does that sounds catabolic, right? It only did things to build more, right? Went to the muscle cell to help build more proteins, right? So after like a workout, your muscle breakdown, you want to build proteins, and so you can get stronger and have bigger muscles, right? So it did that. It went to your fat cells, stored more fat, right, because of all the glucose. That was anabolic. It made more glycogen in the liver. That's anabolic. It also made more glycogen in the muscle, right here. So that's anabolic. And it also helped the muscle cells make ATP, obviously, right? So it's an anabolic hormone. All right, unlike our other antagonist hormone, glucagon, right, which we'll discuss in a future video. And all of this, remember, is so all your insulin is secreted by your beta cells of your pancreas. All right, so that was just a quick, quick, sweet overview of insulin. And I guess we'll pick up in the next video and we'll start talking about the synthesis and secretion of insulin inside our beta cells. All right, so see you guys there.